we both have, a lot of children, and this is so for me, physicians, it doesn't matter who you are. When you have a lot of responsibilities in your life and a lot of demands, it's so important to carve out time and space every single day, mentally and physically, for yourself. Otherwise, things just fall apart.
Nothing in this podcast is intended to render legal, financial, medical, or other professional information. Because the details of your situation are fact-dependent, we highly encourage you to find a recommended individual that you can trust to give you the expertise that you need related to your situation.
I'm excited about this next conversation and our next guest. This is an incredible interview, and we're going to talk about the holidays and physicians and how you're managing your stress. That's right. We're talking with Susan Greeley today about stress management, physician coaching, and the benefit of that physician-coach relationship that more and more doctors are having, and I would say more and more physicians need to have in their life. I look at it as one of my mentors said, if these big corporations have a board of advisors, maybe I as an individual need to as well. And so the importance of the physician coach in our lives is so important. And we're going to lean into that topic, as well as how you manage stress around the holidays. And she's got a really, really cool tip, a pro tip, so to speak, about how to avoid those late night cravings. I know I get them too. I got some peanut butter in the cupboard that I love to take a tablespoon or two around 8:30. So we're going to be talking with Susan Greeley of Connolly Private Health Partners. Let's lean in and listen.
We have to look at the individual holistically. And I can't talk about diet with somebody without understanding the stresses in their life, for example, and do they sleep and do they exercise? So of course it's all tied together. And my team and I have built a team of board certified health coaches who then work directly with our members. So it's not just me doing the coaching. I have a team that helps coaching. And this is a really key point for our physicians, because it does help take some of the burden off the physician, who of course wants their patient to make positive, lifestyle changes and to improve their health and outcomes and all of that, of course, and they're one person trying to be everything for their patient. And so this is a really beautiful pairing where now people recognize that coaching role takes so much burden off of the physician. And it's a really collaborative team where the patient feels supported, they're more engaged in their own health, and the physician is very happy. There's a lot of warm fuzzies that come about from it. I'm very proud of that.
Yeah.
And being in this subscription space in the concierge model, what I see with our physicians is, because they're spending more time with their patients, they're able to open up even little, be a little vulnerable themselves and show, hey, it's a struggle for me too, to not stress eat at night. And I've put on weight, and now I'm really working on that myself. And so that's something I'm very passionate about, and come in is helping them walk the walk of wellness themselves and be an example for their patients, because the patients then do listen to that. They're more likely to make the changes themselves when they see their physician making healthy changes and looking better, feeling better. It's palpable for the patients when the physician is less stressed, of course. So these are conversations I have with the physicians on their own personal self-care and managing relationships in their own. And
Well, good morning, DocPreneur Nation. You're listening to the DocPreneur Leadership Podcast by Concierge Medicine today. And today we have a very special guest. We have Susan Greeley. She is the Senior Vice President and National Director of Wellness Services at Connolly Private Health Partners. And we'll put the links to her bio, as well as how to connect with Connolly Private Health Partners, in the show notes below. Susan, thanks for being here. I'm really excited about kind of our Christmas holiday episode related to your Christmas spirit there.
Yay! I'm here with lights and bells on and all of that. Thank you, Michael. It's really a pleasure to be here with you.
I don't know if it's the old adage. Is it I said something the other day. My teenage daughter tells me all the time, like, people don't say that anymore, Dad. Like,
Okay.
nobody ever said that. And it's like, I'm here with bells on. That's an adage, right? People used to say that.
And
Yeah.
I had to add that, even though honestly, for listeners, I really only have my Christmas lights on.
There you go. Well, today we want to talk about stress management around the holidays. We know that as physicians, you deal with the stress not only among your having to manage it among your patients, but you also manage it personally. And that can be tough around the holidays. Some doctors have family coming into town and they got to reconcile old issues or avoid certain topics. But you also have, patients and staff to manage as well. And they're bringing you their problems. And we're going to talk about stress management during the holidays, some healthy eating habits around the holidays, and just, how do you deal with the rush and business, the busyness of this season as a physician? You're a physician coach. You're talking to the doctors, and bringing them, some insights and feedback and pro tips, so to speak, about say, hey, here's how we get through this together. So, Susan, I'll give me your bio before we launch off. How'd you get into healthcare?
Way back, Michael, I have been a registered dietitian nutritionist for 30 years, which is, really remarkable at this point to say. I always had this sense of knowing around health and wellness, and I grew up in a healthy household. I would like to say, where my mother cooked every day, my dad preached all things health and wellness, including growing up with him. He had dadisms and would say things such as, food is thy medicine. And he also believed like we needed to walk every day and eat whole grain breads and home cooked meals. So I'm really grateful for that. And I just had this curiosity about health and nutrition in particular. And because I grew up with that, knowing about the connection between our diet and our health, it was a natural progression for me, quite honestly. And I did want to become a physician. It just didn't turn out that way.
So you are kind of moved into the world of, becoming interested in food and health and healthy eating. How did that originate?
Since I grew up in a household, and I didn't mention this, I'm the youngest of 8, and having my mom have to cook for a large family every day also inspired me to cook. That's one of my favorite things to do. I find it very relaxing, and it's so important too, tying that to how you feel. And
Mm.
that's, I say how it originated, my whole interest in diet, nutrition, going the path of studying nutrition instead of necessarily becoming a physician. Um, so I had this really wonderful upbringing. And then early in my life, I ended up becoming an exchange student to Germany in
Wow.
Europe. And I saw that European lifestyle and just completely embraced it. So they have, also a lot of hmm, common knowledge when it comes to managing people's health on a daily basis and healthy habits. And that's a really general statement, but it's really true. The overall lifestyle in Europe is much healthier than what I was experiencing in the US. And so I've always tied that into my coaching, my teaching, the way I educate, clients, patients, my physicians. Everything that I do at this point in my life draws from that experience of having I've lived 8 years overseas abroad.
Mm. That would be an interesting book, because we've had a number of authors, but I think you're the first cookbook author we've had on the program. So thanks for what you have done with that in your past. But that worldly knowledge related to other countries, other areas of the world, we do get kind of micro here in the US. And I'm probably the last Canadian on the planet to think that things like concierge medicine and having a good relationship with your doctor is very important. And I would love to see maybe there is already a book out there about kind of European healthy eating, because that is something that we would love to see other. We are such a salad bowl, a melting pot. Maybe, I don't know if those are dadisms, but here in the US of different cultures. And we kind of jump from one restaurant to another, and we don't really think about, the health of what we're eating. And so it'd be nice to kind of follow a plan. So now you fast forward, you're with Castle Connolly Private Health Partners. What do you do with them?
Correct. Connolly Private Health Partners, CCPHP, is a concierge medicine organization. We partner with physicians, and all of their patients who join as well become our members as part of the concierge organization. And the physicians still practice the way they want to practice. And when in partnering with us, all of our members also have part of we call them amenities and enhancements that they can take advantage of, includes a wellness program. And I run the wellness program. And I focus on 4 pillars of wellness, Michael: sleep, exercise, nutrition, and stress management. Again, this was just a natural pairing for me. I don't see health and wellness in a silo at all. We are whole beings. We have to look at the individual holistically. And I can't talk about diet with somebody without understanding the stresses in their life, for example, and do they sleep and do they exercise? So of course it's all tied together. And my team and I have built a team of board certified health coaches who then work directly with our members. So it's not just me doing the coaching. I have a team that helps coaching. And this is a really key point for our physicians, because it does help take some of the burden off the physician, who of course wants their patient to make positive, lifestyle changes and to improve their health and outcomes and all of that, of course, and they're one person trying to be everything for their patient. And so this is a really beautiful pairing where now people recognize that coaching role takes so much burden off of the physician. And it's a really collaborative team where the patient feels supported, they're more engaged in their own health, and the physician is very happy. Like, it's there's a lot of warm fuzzies that come about from it. I'm very proud of that.
Yeah, in this space of concierge medicine, it's not all sunshine and roses either. It can be a very tough job. I remember talking with one doctor. She said over a decade ago, look, I still work 16, 18 hours a day. I just spend my time differently, but I'm a heck of a lot more happier. And there's also, some stress that comes with working inside a concierge medicine practice too. It doesn't immediately flip a switch and everything is, wonderful day one. It is a tough job, just like any other job. It has its days, but it is a different way to practice, more under a subscription-based healthcare delivery model. If you want more information about that, to learn more about that, you can go to ccphp.net to learn more about what Castle Connolly Private Health Partners is doing. And so, as we jump into our topics today, let's focus on one of those SENS. Those you mentioned sleep and exercise, but let's focus today on related to the holidays. Everybody's reconciling with stress and stress management. And so what are the conversations that around stress and managing stress around the holidays right now that you're having with physicians? You've talked with one yesterday. You're going to have another conversation today, last week. What are those conversations looking like?
It's all about relationships in their own lives, relationships with their patients, and then their own personal lives. Because despite what made me think, that physician is a human too and has their own personal life, Michael. And so they also need a space to discuss that. Physicians in general are used to being on in that go-to, and I do want to say knowing it all and being it all for their patients, where they're kind of up here, and I think the patients tend to lose sight of the fact that they have their personal stresses too. And being in this subscription space in the concierge model, what I see with our physicians is, because they're spending more time with their patients, they're able to open up even little, be a little vulnerable themselves and show, hey, it's a struggle for me too to not stress eat at night, and I've put on weight, and now I'm really working on that myself. And so that's something I'm very passionate about, and come in is helping them walk the walk of wellness themselves and be an example for their patients, because the patients then do listen to that. They're more likely to make the changes themselves when they see their physician making healthy changes and looking better, feeling better. It's like palpable for the patients when the physician is less stressed, of course. So these are conversations I have with the physicians on their own personal, self-care and managing relationships in their own lives, honestly. So what does that even mean when you're busy, dealing with patients and the patient stories all the time? When my team and I meet with our physicians, we talk about a lot of the stories that are going on in the patients' lives. You and I were talking about this beforehand, where the physician may have sit down with the patient to talk about their chest cold, but you end up spending 45 minutes about, the stresses in their marriage. And they're really not there to be the therapist. So what happens often is in this coaching relationship, we say, oh, you know what, I am talking about with the patient, setting boundaries and various things too. And if the coach can talk about setting boundaries with the patient, and the patient gets, can relay that back to their physician at some point on how they, and we do as well, how they're making these changes to create these boundaries in their own life, that's actually very beneficial for the physician as well, because the physician then feels like, that's kind of like one less stress I have to take on to solve. Physicians aren't going to solve that marriage problem, but they listen and they take it all on. Do you see what I'm saying? Like it's this full feedback of, the relationship stresses that are a big part of everybody's life right now. And this comes up in every single coaching call that I do, that my coaches do, my conversations with our physicians. This is not for nothing a very stressful time of year. We're all, you and I know, are very optimistic. Like our default mode is a positive person. And it's still very difficult on a daily basis to manage all that's coming at us. Like we get stressed out. You get on, I'll speak for both of us. It's just how we put our own tools and priorities in place to manage that, because we both have, a lot of children. And this is, so for me, physicians, it doesn't matter who you are, when you have a lot of responsibilities in your life and a lot of demands, it's so important to carve out time and space every single day, mentally and physically, for yourself. Otherwise, things just fall apart.
There's a great book, and I'll mail it to you, so the next time we meet next month, you can talk about it, what your thoughts are on it, because I think I've been recommending it and sending it to. It's probably one of the top 3 books I send most to doctors, and it's a book by Carrie Nieuwhof, and it's not an endorsement or anything like that, but it's a great book related to time management for business leaders, and I think it's very applicable for physicians, related to how you spend your time each day, because he breaks it into kind of like a stoplight. You've got a red zone, a yellow zone, and a green zone. You're like, green, I love what I do. This is the time period, and I'm a morning person, so from 7 to 11, I'm on, and I love what I do. Anything after that's kind of a yellow zone. Don't catch me in the evening. Like, this is not when you want to bring me, that we have an issue, or we have a problem. And your staff knows how to manage you as well, as their boss, as you are their boss. Like, they know when to bring you bad news. They know when to get something from you. I want to press on, you brought up 4 things I want to talk about that I think related to the stress management. Number 1, stress eating. By definition, we can kind of all figure what that is out. I have found that, in my stress, I will tend to lean to a teaspoon or tablespoon or half a jar of peanut butter. And you're like, it's protein, right? And it's like, it's got to be good for you. And then you're like, oh, I'm like 4 tablespoons in. Nope, that's probably not good for me. And so I've also, tried to do things that I know will help manage stress, but it's also like, I know I'm stressed out, so I'm drinking a lot of water, right? Like, I will guzzle the water as to help me manage the stress around the holidays, because I found like I'd rather do that than, alcohol or, all these other things, eating, we'll put on pounds during the holidays. So how do you, what are those conversations around stress eating Because let's be honest, there's a lot of unhealthy physicians out there too that are not taking care of themselves, which I want to, before I jump into the next topic and ask too many questions, I'll let you talk about stress eating.
Okay. I'll actually give you a tool and everyone a tool that I have taught in lifestyle change programs where I've done the weight management classes. I do this in coaching and I've told physicians. It is the stop behavior, literally stop in that moment as you're, the spoon's going back into the jar of peanut butter or your hand's going into the box of cookies or the cookie jars I have here or the ice cream. Because so many people do chips, whatever it is, you need to have that awareness to say to stop. And STOP, I learned this from Deepak Chopra in one of his meditations or one of his teachings way back when. So S stands for stop. In that moment, you literally have to stop. But the most important part is the T, which is take 3 deep breaths. And actually, Michael, I tell people just take 1 long, deep breath. And as you were talking about the stress eating, I almost said, just take a deep breath. And I truly believe and know that that is the most important thing for all of us on a daily basis. It's that mindfulness in that moment. So what mindfulness is to come into the moment and learn how to calm yourself. Because when you're stress eating or you're reacting to a drive or whatever it is, you're caught up in stress and guaranteed you're breathing, short, fast breaths. But if you take 1 long, deep breath in and a nice exhale, you'll all of a sudden have this awareness in your brain go, gosh, what am I doing? So then the O is observe how you feel. And when you observe how you feel after that long, deep breath, it's so much easier to then do the P, which is now proceed, get back to your life, proceed. And Chopra says, proceed with loving kindness towards yourself. I love that.
I
Stop.
like that.
Yeah.
Stop.
Stop and take a deep breath. If you have time for 3 long, deep breaths, it's even more effective.
That is an interesting perspective. So related to meditation, because it's a little bit of a rabbit trail, but it falls under the category here of stress management. And meditation can kind of get this, kind of overly spiritual, we kind of get into a weird zone with a lot of people, but it's also becoming a little bit more, I think, mainstream where people are like, if you don't make it weird, it's not weird. So,
Correct.
talk to us about how, what is meditation, in your experience? What conversations are you having with physicians around this? And how do physicians kind of deploy this in their own life? So it's like, I don't have 30 minutes to sit cross-legged in a room by myself. I think that's probably a stereotype that needs to be broken around this.
Oh, 100%. It's why I have my podcast and I have several episodes about this. And it's an ongoing discussion we need to have. I love this topic so much, Michael. And I'm going to apologize because there's like so many thoughts coming in and flooding my brain. And for that reason alone, meditation is helpful for people like you and me, where you've got a lot on your brain at all time. Everybody has that quote unquote monkey brain, and it may be hard to focus sometimes during your day. Well, trust me, if you build a daily meditation practice, and it is a practice, just like other things in your life, such as eating well, such as daily exercise, and even brushing your teeth, for God's sakes. The meditation, very different from mindfulness. They're 2 distinct modalities to help yourself manage stress. So the mindfulness is in this moment. It's becoming present, and we all need that. In this moment, you and I talking, if I don't have a dog barking, but that could take me out of this moment. And so mindfulness would be coming back into this present moment by taking the long, deep breaths, something like that. Meditation is really science-based, and that's why physicians love it. I haven't met a single physician who doesn't recognize the benefits of meditation, and they themselves want to get there. And we all use time, often as like the quote unquote excuse to not get there. But in any case, meditation is based in science and how it changes our brain chemistry, and even the synapses, and it helps us be more productive and effective in our relationships, in our overall lives. And it has so many benefits on your physical health as well. So for me, I help people, like I have developed a daily meditation practice, and I had this conversation actually more than once over the past week with one of our physicians, because we love devices and data and improving things, and we both wear the Aura ring. And he marvels at the fact that my heart rate variability, the HRV, is really good, and it's high most days, even if I have had a glass of wine at night or two, quite honestly. Like, I have different things that come in, and I said, I firmly believe that my daily meditation is the most important thing for helping me with that recovery from stress. And it helps me manage stress and go to bed with more peace of mind. So let's say you're a bad sleeper. I say, develop a meditation practice. If you are having trouble losing weight, develop a meditation practice, right? Like, I could almost at this point recommend building in meditation for every aspect of your health and your functioning, and not just yours. I mean, one. It's something like, how do you get there? That's the behavior change that I work on with people, including physicians, patients, members, whoever I'm talking to, family. And you start small. You can't go out and run a marathon. This came from one of my podcast guests, and he was saying this, like, he sat down when he first started and thought that he was going to go sit on that meditation pillow for at least a half an hour and and have this great meditation experience. When after 30 seconds, you get frustrated and kind of throw in the towel and say, I can't do this, it's not for me. Well, of course, no physician is going to recommend that, they're somebody who's been sedentary their whole lives goes and, even runs a 5K without having run a mile. So it's the same, building a practice takes time. It does take time, but it could be small amounts of time, 5 minutes twice a day, 10 minutes twice a day, or if you just have that 5 minutes one time a day, it's better than nothing. And I say that with all aspects of our lifestyle behaviors. If you only have 10 minutes a day for your exercise, it's better than zero.
Yeah. Well, and so what does that actually look like? Like, what are the tools that physicians can use that you recommend or talk to them about? Like, I remember hearing from a concierge doctor in Arizona. She said, and this is an endorsement, we have to be very clear on those types of things around here, but right. But she's like, I love my Calm app. That was one doctor said. And I know that there's other tools out there. So what other types of tools does that look like for you? So if I am a busy physician, I've got, 7 patients today, I've got 40 patients today. How do I find the time to find that 5 minutes versus grab a protein bar or snack bar I know is probably not going to be super healthy for me? I would rather stop or, try some form of meditation. How does that look like when I've got this hectic, busy schedule and, I can't just find a broom closet to disappear in?
Okay, for physicians in a traditional practice model, it's a little trickier because they are seeing 20 or 30, or I've seen upwards of like 50 patients a day. And that sounds like it's just one more thing they have to do and add stress to their lives. So that's kind of a separate scenario. In the concierge model with the physicians that I work with, they do have the time, and it's just a foreign concept to them. They're not used to it. There is that transition from that traditional practice to all of this, not, slowly, I'd say there's a transition of recognizing, oh, I do have more time in my day now where I can build in time for a real lunch, and I can build in time for meditation. I can close my door, but most importantly is to turn off notifications on things for those 10 minutes on your phone, your computer. You really do need that quiet space for yourself. So back to technology, Michael, there's no right or wrong. And I think that we are so lucky to have technology in the right and positive ways. This is so important to know how to manage this device, right? Our phone. It's a
necessary evil.
Yes, it is a necessary evil. I was going to say blessing and a curse. I am so grateful for the app on my phone that I've used. Calm. I use something called Journey Med. It doesn't exist anymore. Journey Meditation. Sadly, they don't have the consumer app. But I transitioned to Insight Timer. You mentioned Calm. There's Headspace. There's no right or wrong. We're not necessarily endorsing one or the other. What I find is that all of my favorite meditation instructors, and several that I've had on my podcast, 4 of them to be exact, are actually on Insight Timer themselves. So it's like a universe in and of itself. And I really rely on that. And you can find what works for you, but you can find 5-minute meditations. You can find mantra based. That's using a word or a tool to help take your brain away from, all the thoughts that are there. So you can use mantra based. You can do like the body check-in. You can base it on mindfulness, breathing. There's no right or wrong when it comes to starting. And I do encourage people to use an app or some sort of tool, because it makes it easy for us. We have that now. So not all technology is bad. Not all use is obviously not being quote unquote addicted to that app. I see it as a very healthy thing for me. It's like a dear friend on my phone. I wake up in the morning and this has become my own kind of struggle. Instead of checking email or any form of social media for sure, but especially 3 different emails, I open that app instead and I start my day with a meditation.
I love that. That's really interesting because, like you said, I mean, I got it in my pocket. It's like, I think you said it very well of how we relate to these things. This is our dear friend, right? Like this is probably our best friend besides our, significant others or whatever, our best friends out there in our social groups. But really we spend more, our eyeballs and attention is drawn to this. And we should figure out ways to make it more productive for us. So before we move into kind of our lightning round of questions, as we come in for a landing here, one larger topic that under the stress management of today, I feel like we've just broken the plastic seal. You know how like some of those toy packages around the holidays have like, there's more. My son didn't believe me. I was like, no, people go to the emergency room because they're trying to open up toy packages that have this hard plastic. And he's like, that's not true. Nobody in the world has ever done that. I was like, Google it. And so he's like, oh, I guess I was wrong. 500 people every year go. Like, yeah, I know, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, they cut their hand open on those hard plastics. But I feel like we've just started to undo the packaging of our conversations. So we're going to try and have a monthly conversation with Susan related to the important work that she's doing at Connolly Private Health Partners around physician coaching, around the SENS solutions, and those issues related to sleep and exercise and stress management and all the like. But we've just skimmed the surface today. But before we close, I want to have you talk about the importance of physician coaching. That's something that you do on a regular basis. You talk with doctors all the time. I'll share from my own personal experience. I have a great subscription doctor. I always say, look, like you're probably one of the 5 most influential voices in my life, besides certain family members, right? Like what you say could change my whole life tomorrow or today. So our relationship is important. But beyond that, a coach. And so our insurance program that comes through my wife's side, for all other types of care, specialists and hospitalizations and so on, requires us to have a monthly coaching call. And I thought it was super annoying the first year. And then I started getting into it. And I was like, I was sharing stuff with that PA or that nurse practitioner. I was like, yeah, my cousin shared with me that when she was engaged and about to be married, she wanted to have, definition on her shoulders. So every time she went to the restroom, she said, every time I went to the bathroom at work, I did 10 push-ups or 10 sit-ups. Wow. And I was like, that's amazing. We were at her wedding up in Saskatchewan, and I was like, that's a really great, like, mental reminder to kind of flip the switch of like, every time I use the restroom, do 10 push-ups or sit-ups or barbells or whatever. So I took that, and I have 2 dumbbells in the bathroom that every time you use the restroom throughout the day, so you just fit in 10, 12 reps, right? And then you move on with the rest of your day. But it's just the little things. It's like saves me a whole visit to the gym. But as you talk with physicians and you do this physician coaching, I can tell from my own experience in talking with having a coach in my life. Even my wife has said, like, yeah, I was struggling with some stuff, relationally with some family members this year. And she's like, I didn't realize that stranger on the other side of the phone, I ended up talking to her for an hour, and she gave me some really great tips. She's like, don't follow this person on this, over here, and do this over here. Even stress management at work was talked about with your physician, with her coach. So talk to us about that importance, because I think it's a field that needs to grow. And I feel like it is a field that's growing, but we're just at the inception of it. And maybe we aren't. Maybe this has been around for a long time.
Mm-hmm. Because getting a therapist is too much for most people, honestly. And I think it can bring about a lot of stress, whereas the coach and the coaching role is a very positive and trusted, like a therapist isn't always a positive experience.
Mm-hmm.
And with coaching, it opens up different avenues for the person to talk about what's going on not setting, let's say, without guilt, without really having to dig too deep, if you understand what I mean. It's more, let's assess where things are and what's driving me crazy or what's getting in my way. And how do I help you pinpoint these aspects of your life right now that I can help you then focus on? And I've got a whole bunch of tools and resources and ideas myself. As I get to know you, Michael, I can make suggestions and give you some tips at the same time as like making you aware yourself and expressing, oh, this is a real issue. And I see that you're right, Susan, by doing the 10 push-ups every day in the bathroom or twice a day, whatever.
Not in the bathroom, because we all know I was like the
Whatever
towel,
you're doing.
right?
I
But
don't
it's
know what
like
you're
you go back to your office, whatever.
But to that point, so with the physician, it's so fun and funny that in coaching people tell their coach what they're not telling their doctor, they're not telling their spouse or that. And, some of these private and intimate details, or just in that moment, they feel like, oh, I can share that with my coach. But people are still kind of afraid to tell doctors certain things. And then the physician doesn't tell anybody a lot of things because they feel like they're in that role, that they're the person who's on that everybody goes to, right? For the health advice, for, as you said, there's such an important person in most people's lives, and it's hard for them to admit weakness, right? And it isn't weakness, and that's the difference. It's recognizing that we're all human. We have areas of our life that we need help with. Who doesn't need support in some aspect of their life? And I'm very independent, like I do so much myself. I can assure you, I need help and support in certain areas, and I'm not even aware of it. And then when somebody tells me or gives me certain reminders, I'm like, oh my gosh, I so needed to hear that. Thank you. And
Mm-hmm.
sometimes it's even from my kids, like my son. But so back to the physicians, I think a big part of it is making them aware that there is this resource for them that's going to help them manage stress, be more productive. Again, set boundaries. Like, here's a good example. When you have such a busy schedule and you've got people contacting you through the telehealth app and through your text messages and through email, and I'll use an old school like beepers, and you're bombarded by things. Learning how to set out of office notifications like auto responders and just turning things off, turning very specific things so you can carve out time for lunch. And that's a big deal. How many people don't take time to sit down and eat, and they're grabbing something on the go, and what do you know? They have, digestive issues as well. So sometimes, or putting on weight, and you have to really look at the overall habits and lifestyle. And that's what physicians tend to think of themselves as being, it doesn't apply to them. And the coach helps them work through all of those things. I think one of the best areas for physicians to find that help from a coach is actually managing all of the communications, the bombardment from text messages and telehealth apps and EMRs. And so they're getting messages constantly, whether you're a concierge doctor or traditional practice, doesn't matter where you are as a physician. It's so important to figure out how to set those boundaries. Back to technology, like it is that, double-edged sword, blessing and curse. How do you turn it all off even for 10 minutes? Because we're conditioned to respond instantly. As we're sitting here, I had to turn off, one of the apps as well, because I'm like, oh, a message just came in. So that's where the coach is actually an integral part of their life, honestly, because they're not able to set those boundaries for themselves. It's very uncomfortable. They feel guilty. They're afraid. Like there's all of those emotions that come into it as well. And that's where and why a coach is very, very helpful in, working through that self-judgment, the barriers, and keeping them accountable to making these small changes for themselves that help them be less stressed, more productive, better in their own personal relationships, better, and more patient and in the moment. And that's a big deal. Is all of the concierge physicians that I talk to really appreciate that they can be present in the moment with their patients. So we'll bring that full circle to our mindfulness. And that is, to me, the most important part about patient care is knowing that your physician, whoever that healthcare professional is, or the coach, is present with you in that moment. This is our, private time and space, and you don't want interruptions mentally, physically.
Well, now we move into our lightning round of questions, and we'll figure this out within the next 6 minutes. So you can be however brief or long-winded as you like, but it'll give us each about 10 minutes before our next appointment, right? Because we each have interviews happening after this. But we're going to continue this conversation with Susan Greeley, the Senior Vice President and National Director of Wellness Services at Connolly Private Health Partners, next month. And again, we've just ripped off or torn off that little layer around that little layer of plastic around the chicken salad, and we're about to haven't even opened up the package here. Here is a few questions for you as we've been talking today. And we'll put all the links on how to connect with your podcast, because you've got some amazing guests and really great interviews that you've done lately. I love the one on the radio and music. That was really cool. And I've got it. I have, probably half. I'm really picky about the podcasts I choose on my best friend here. And, you've been added to the list. And because when you're in the car, in the 90s car, you're trying to figure out, what do I listen to?
Honor.
But, right.
Very.
So,
thank you.
All right. Wellness by definition, because it has changed. It has, too much of a touchy-feely thing in the 80s and 90s and early 2000s. It kind of, lost its luster for a long time. People misunderstand it. In your opinion, how do you define it?
I knew you were going to ask me for a definition. Oh, wellness and well-being. It's, for me, because I'm very mind, body, spirit oriented, it encompasses all three of those. I don't separate out my mental and spiritual self from my physical well-being, and wellness to me focuses on the whole person. Okay. And
wellness versus meditation.
Wellness versus meditation. Well, so meditation is a practice. It's, wellness and well-being are a state of health and a state of being, whereas meditation is an active habit. It's an active practice that, can literally transform your thoughts, your brain, your physical state, believe it or not. We could talk about that on a follow-up podcast on how it can actually, there's so much power in our minds to determine our health. And that is a really deeper topic that I love to talk about. And I think that that's really important for people to hear, because they lack that either knowing or understanding of how powerful they are themselves. And my podcast, by the way, I always say it's like to inspire and empower people. And I think empowering individuals to take control of their own health is just the most important thing. And the physicians, the coach, the dietitian, whoever you have for your support helps empower you at the same time. Is not just, they're not responsible for healing you. I really believe the individual is responsible for healing themselves. Like, healing does start in the mind. So that's, it is related to the meditation. That is a very, very awesome topic. I'll leave it at that for today. If
Oh,
that's
maybe that's the one we talk about next.
yeah, unless you want me to
So
keep elaborating.
next
But yeah.
question, real short. The last 3 apps you downloaded on your phone.
Ooh, okay. Well, I got a new phone and I had to literally talk about stress, uninstall and then reinstall. It was a whole complicated thing. But the 3 most recent that I really use, Fit Radio is one. And I'll send listeners to my podcast, A Sense of Wellness, to find out more about Fit Radio for workouts. I absolutely love it. Then Nike Run Club, I really like that. So my apps are all related to health and exercise. I need help with it, as I said. And so my favorite apps are related to motivating me to move more.
That's great. I think that's a very inspiring way to look at this device, who has unfortunately become our best friend in many ways, is to, let it be a useful tool, something that we don't regret picking up at the moment. All right.
One of
So
my favorite apps, though, so even though it wasn't the top 3, I do use the Aura for the Aura Ring, track my sleep, things on that. And I have recently embraced doing kind of, more work on my phone, meaning through Google, you can have Microsoft Notes on your phone, you can have Google Docs and things like that. So that's a big change for me. I'm somebody who always kept notebooks and calendars, and there's been a transition for me. I do every single day use the notes on my phone as well. Like you
it's
said,
so important to try and figure out a way, because it is all part of stress management. And I think one of my favorite authors is Jeff Henderson, and he wrote in his book Next, What to Do Next. He said, if Coca-Cola has a board of advisors, I think it's probably wise that we do too, as individuals, as business owners, as doctors, right? Well, hey, look at that. There you go. Excellence wins. Yes,
See?
that's another great book.
I told you I use the notes section on my phone more than anything, Michael. That is what I took. I wrote that down at Concierge Medicine Forum when I was listening to you talk back in October. When was I there? When did we meet?
Yep, October.
Cool? See, that's proof.
Yeah.
And
Wow.
it's amazing. Listen to
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that's so cool. And, that is great advice. And I think as physicians, it is, you wear an impossible weight on your shoulders every single day, and you can't possibly do it all and be it all. And we have, as your patients, impossible expectations for you. And that's unfortunate, but also, it's a grand responsibility. And so as we come in for a landing, we have 2 more real quick questions for you as we wrap up. The book you recommend most? For doctors, let's say. Or it could be a pleasure reading book. We've also had those too, because there's a lot of physicians who are looking for some great reads that are unrelated to careers.
I have so many. I really do. And unfortunately, I don't always recommend the same book to broad, like maybe I need to start doing that. Well, I did actually just yesterday, no joke, ship a hard copy of the book that I use to get me into meditation. It's a book called by Emily Fletcher. Stress Less, what is it? Look at me. I can't even remember the title. You just caught me off guard. But it's Stress Less, Accomplish More, I believe is the actual
Hmm.
title. And I had several copies, so I just sent one to one of our doctors because
Wonderful.
again, we had this whole
Yeah, I
conversation.
find sending books to the doctors out there who need specific, tools is so just with a handwritten note, like we talked about.
That's yeah.
It just goes so it lets them know that hey, you're not by yourself out there. Might
Right.
feel like it most days, but you're not. And our last question, finally, for you is, related to the job but unrelated to the job. Of you working and helping so many physicians there is what do you want to be known for?
Hmm. That's a pretty profound question. More and more, I recognize that I do want to continue to be recognized as, I'm going to say this, it's not hokey, a loving leader. I want to, you looked a little caught off guard by that, right? Like I'm a leader in my field, I'm a leader in my company and the field of wellness, not just nutrition, and to actually focus on doing it in a more loving, compassionate way.
Hmm. Well, that was wonderful, and that's a great thing to be known for. I don't think I don't know if I have an answer for that. I think I want to be known as the thank you note guy,
You're an
right?
amazing thank you guy. Yes, I'll come up with a name for you for one of our next podcasts because you um, have changed my life in ways that you probably don't even know either. Just your impact on people by doing that. The simple things I will say, Michael, yesterday I was clearing off my desk and you wrote me such a beautiful thank you note after CMF. And it is one I'm in this mode of, not a Marie Kondo extremist, but I'm trying to declutter. Okay. And certain things are worth keeping. And that note, that thank you card from you is one that I will probably keep forever.
Oh, well, thank
Yeah.
you so
Yeah.
much. That means a lot.
It meant a lot to
And
you.
it is it is in many ways you and I have in your team what we get to do in the world of in the space of concierge medicine, even if it's small and misunderstood at times. In many ways, it is the best job in the world because we get to work with some of the happiest doctors in the world, which is kind of fun because, doctors are not always known for being the happiest folks out there. And there's
Their
so many reasons for
transformation.
that.
I'm sorry,
What's that?
I do get excited. I've seen so many of their transformations from not being the happiest and being stressed out was, you know, even if they're positive, happy, they were in a rough place. And then once they changed that practice model to concierge, a subscription-based model, and seeing how they change and evolve. And it's so rewarding, honestly.
Well, I'm sorry to bump up. I'm going to give you 4 minutes before your next
Oh, yeah,
appointment.
right.
But again, our guest today has been Susan Greeley. She is the Senior Vice President of and National Director of Wellness Services at Connolly Private Health Partners. We'll put the links to ccphp.net and how to learn more about physician coaching, wellness, the SENS program that Connolly Private Health Partners has. And then we will continue this conversation in the next month. Stay tuned. We'll talk about something else with Susan. Thank you so much for being our guest today. There's so much more we have yet to uncover. We need a couple more years every month to figure all this out and to give doctors some more help. And again, if you are new to the program, this is just remember, as you manage your stress during the holidays, you think about moving forward, what you're going to do with your practice. Just remember this. It's so simple. It's no longer about being the best doctor in the world anymore. Take that responsibility off. It's about being the best doctor for the world, for your patients, and for your local community. And certainly, Susan, you and your team are doing great things for so many doctors. Thank you for what you do.
Thank you, Michael. I was about to say thank you for what you do too. You took the words right out of my mouth. It's
We'll
an
see you
honor.
next month.
See you next month. Happy holidays.